want to thank everybody for being here on a Friday afternoon. We are the people, by the people, for all the people. We are a group of self-advocates, family members, champions for those with developmental disabilities, and we are in our Real Talk series session. It is the end of week 6, Nicole? Hey, I finally got it. End of week 6, and our subcommittees in the House are wrapping up, as in over. And our budget has come out. The House and the Senate are producing their budgets. And thank goodness today we have Mr. Jim DeBeaugrine on the line, who has been doing work in this space for just a few years. And he has come on to talk to us about what's going on right now when it comes to our budgets and really what's happening up in Tallahassee. And then after Jim's got to run a little bit early. Tom is gonna talk a little bit about DDDA last week and what we're going to be doing going further. We did have the APD slotted to come on and discuss their new website, but I received a call right before the meeting that they had a conflict and they're going to come do that next Friday. So without further ado, Mr. DeBogren, you want to come talk real talk with us? Let's talk about this budget.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, so first, just to get to some really important news for those of you that aren't following and don't know, FSU baseball on top of the Michigan Wolverines, 6-0 in the bottom of the eighth inning. So important number there is three more outs and FSU wins. So with that bit of promising news, we'll go into the budget, and we are as Stephanie was mentioning earlier, we're the subcommittees are shutting down. Uh, Attention is being focused on the budget. There are a handful of substantive bills that are still alive. Quite a few of the bills that I've been tracking are probably dead now because they haven't moved. But there's a handful there. Yeah, if anyone has any questions about anything, I can answer those. But let's go into last week. One thing I would say, speaking of APD, is congratulations to Bob Astalos. He was confirmed by the Florida Senate. He becomes the fourth APD director to make it through the Senate confirmation process. So I was honored to be there in attendance when the Senate vote was taken, as were a number of other stakeholders. So that was nice to see people turn out to show support and to share what is a very special moment. So let's go into the budget. And what I'm going to talk about are items that are in the budget, and there is also an implementing bill, which is a bill that basically runs concurrent with the budget, meaning that the bill is good for 1 year. Then both the House and Senate have what are called conforming bills that are they're really just regular bills, except that leadership has designated them as part of the overall budget package that passes. And these bills, basically, the chambers make permanent changes to Florida law in these conforming bills that are needed to implement the policies that are in the General Appropriations Act. These bills will be negotiated during the budget conference, just like any other, just like the General Appropriations Act and the implementing bill. And just Real quickly, the chambers are moving fairly rapidly right now after being stalled. Usually, both chambers waited until the end of week 5 to release their budgets. Usually, we see those budgets in week 3 or week 4, so they're a week late. Uh, what I've heard is that they're going to try to make up a little bit of time, and they even have some hope of adjourning the session on time, and there's a lot of people that would love to see that. Anyway, the House has already sent its budget to the Senate. The Senate has sent the budget back with their bill on it. They're not going to agree to that. They're getting into a conference posture. The Senate, about 15 minutes ago, released their budget conferees. So with that, let's launch into the budget. Not as much to talk about as previous years, but there's a little bit there. Starting with the iBudget waiver, both of the chambers allocate $22 million to the iBudget. And the 22 million, if you were to look at the spreadsheet in the Senate, they only show 10 million of that. I'm adding the federal funds that will be earned, just so you guys get an idea of what the full impact of the funding decision is. They take different approaches. The House uses the funds to reduce the waiting list. The Senate uh, would apply the funds to an across-the-board provider rate increase. I
Can
think
I ask you a quick question there, since you're getting into the weeds and this is the weeds we want to be in? Um,
absolutely
so this last year there was an initiative to invite 5,000 people off the wait list, and about 20% have responded so far.
right.
Does the money that's we're talking about in the budget this year also calculate in that, delayed tidal wave of potential additional people onboarding?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom. Think I don't think there's a hard connection there. Because I think Bob, uh, and again, I want to be careful not to speak for him, but I think he felt that there were sufficient funds already in the recurring base budget to be able to do this
Okay.
without creating a deficit. And I think what I've heard him say, and again, you would need to really speak with him directly to get a full explanation of this. But what I've heard him say to other people is that they felt they could enroll up to 2,000 people within the budget that they had, and that. So I think the as far as what the House actually writes in proviso. It's that same old language we've always seen where they just tell the agency to enroll as many people as they can.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't assign a number. And honestly, I wish they were a little bit more methodical and maybe a little more analytical when they fund the
Well,
wait list so that they would have so that there's a clear expectation that can then be used for future accountability and oversight. And were you going to ask a follow-up?
yeah, the follow-up is really has to do with then the mention about the revenue estimating conference part of the managed care, and concerns that may be arising that iBudget is losing the attention to be adequately funded without being part of the revenue estimating conference. While if the managed care does, it kind of leaves APD behind.
Yeah, I understand the concern. I think and that particular provision is in one of the conforming bills, and I'm gonna talk about those a little bit later. But
Okay.
just what's happened is the Senate has given us an excellent opportunity to bring that issue up.
Mhm.
It's if we're going to do it for the managed care program, then why don't we do it? We could do the same thing for the iBudget. Now the House, um, I will say they have they put money. Well, both the House and Senate put money into the iBudget. The House puts about 29 million into that into the managed care pilot program. But at least they're funding both. They're putting a little bit in both pots. Um, I'm going to talk about that estimating conference language in a little bit more detail
Right.
later on, but I think it's a good point. I think people could, they've opened the can of worms, and I think we all us worms need to jump out and maybe
Well,
talk
it's
about.
just got to be fair. You know,
Yeah, yeah, just
make it an equal opportunity for these choices that are being created. And I think that the likelihood of saying no managed care is long behind us, but the forced managed care for everybody still is ahead of us.
well, I understand the concern, and that of course was a big focus of a lot of the people that attended DD Day. Is they wanted to let the legislature know that that choice they have now to remain in the I budget is important to them.
Hmm.
And yeah, just while we're on the DD Day, it was great to see you, Tom, and Stephanie, and I know there were a lot of folks on this call there, and it was good to have you all in Tallahassee.
It was amazing. I felt like, every time we go up there, it's this reunion and we brought in new families and you all were there like in the rotunda where everybody could meet one another. I love that day.
Yeah, it was a good day. I sure enjoyed myself, and I appreciate Bob for being there in the rotunda with folks and pretty much spending the day with us. Um,
Yeah,
some
he
of
took us, he took us, he took us out to dinner the night before, and then the
Yeah,
next day, a couple of the families stayed and we toured the actual APD and got to meet their staff and really see what it looks like, you know,
yeah.
behind the
Well,
doors.
I will tell you that I think he's off to a good start in my opinion. I'm
Yep,
one of his fans.
me too.
That
So
too, I think. Hmm.
yep, I'm very encouraged. Um, Again, there's not that much of interest in the budget. Unfortunately, it was mostly a continuation, but I will say this, each chamber. So the big surplus, that accumulating surplus that we've talked about, it's if you count the federal funds that could be earned, it's just past $1 billion, 1,066,000 if you're
But does
uh,
that mean that is that money being put back into GR? Is that what you're saying? Surplus?
I'm saying there, yeah, well,
Here it
I,
comes.
I think I'm going to explain that here for you,
Here
Stephanie.
it comes.
So here's what the Senate does. The Senate takes a relatively modest amount. It's about $48 million. So let me back up. So that $1 billion consists of 456 million of state money, which, if it's matched by Medicaid, draws down, another 600 million and change. And that's where you come up with the billion plus. So the Senate, so out of that 456 million of state general revenue, the state takes the Senate takes what is a modest 48 million of that. So it would leave just over 400 million of general revenue in that lump sum. 45.3 million of that would be matched. So that back up again. there's they put I think $22 million or $21 million of state money that's going to draw down federal match for a total of 45.3 million for workforce recruitment and retention initiatives. So this would be I would expect something similar to the ACA. I think that was the back during the COVID. So the COVID dollars that were available for grants for workforce recruitment and retention, it kind of seems like that there's not a whole lot of detail as to how that money would be spent. And then they take 27.5 million to address a salary deficit at the two state institutions. So the one in Mariana and the one in Gainesville, Talcachali. That those dollars are not matched. The 27 million is being shifted to cover uh, basically what's a deficit that's caused by the institution's declining census that is resulting in their ability not to earn the amount of federal match that it takes to run these facilities. There's a lot
But what
of
you just said in English, Jim, is that there's less people in the institutions, so they have less money, so they're losing money because of it.
they're losing money because
Okay.
there's an overhead, there is a fixed overhead cost that is associated with running facilities as large as Takachali and Sunland.
Mhm.
And if you
But there's
don't
not
have
enough
the
people in it, right?
right, there's not enough people in it. And that's one of the reasons one of these days that's going to reach a critical mass. It's just they're they're not they're not admitting new people, so as time and attrition takes its toll, this
And the
becomes
most complicated part about that, just as a side note, is for some of those folks that are the most behaviorally, developmentally, medically complex individuals, and the system of support in the community historically was supposed to be developed so those would sunset, but it's also just been the level of intensity, the amount of minimum staffing requirements to meet all those needs is a very, very expensive proposition, whether there's 50 people there or 200 people there. Correct, Jim?
yeah, yeah. I mean, and again, there is a certain infrastructure that has to be in place, and you're right. Whether there's one person there or 1,000, there's a certain minimal infrastructure that has to be maintained. If you've ever been to Sunland or Takachala, you'll see what I mean. They're massive
Mhm.
physical plants. Sunland, Mariana in particular, it is an absolutely beautiful piece of property. It would it would make for a great dairy farm, or could even put peanut. I mean, there's just no telling what you could do with it, but you won't get the economic impact out of those uses that you do right now with a state institution, and that becomes very you get into some pretty heavy duty local politics. I've
This is the
lived
biggest employer, one of the biggest employers in the whole community, and
I
the economic impact will be absolutely devastating if there's not some replacement industries or things to help.
Yeah, what I've been told is it is the largest single employer in Jackson County, Florida, and that surprised me because there's a federal prison there. This is actually kind of my part of the world. I grew up just across the state line in Alabama from there, and um, but there's a federal prison. There's at least one state prison. It used to have Dozier. Of course, that kind of went by the
Mhm.
wayside, but and then there's a huge fulfillment center for one of the major retail stores. And I just I found that surprising, but if that's, I just can tell you, it goes, 30 years ago, whenever I did the budget for the old developmental services, um, no, you didn't even want to talk about doing anything with that institution because you would get, it would be a very, I know this from experience.
The sacred cow.
Yes, you would get a talking to by the local delegation there, and then when I was the APD director, it was equally sacrosanct. It's a tough issue.
So Jim, as you're knocking off the 56 million of state dollars and kind of identifying different categories that are being peeled off to use that, does that mean that then the federal match of those dollars disappears as well?
Well, on the so the 27.5 million, if that goes through to cover the salary deficit. Now the just so you understand, the House actually funds that out of just general revenue. They fund the 27.5 million out of recurring general revenue. They don't tap into that surplus lump sum. The 27.5 million, that's not going to draw federal match.
Okay.
The other issue, the 45.3 million, again, 21 million in round numbers is state dollars. The other is federal match. So kind of a mixed bag. Now moving to the House, again, remember 456 million of general revenue. The House takes 300 million of that and just puts it back in the general revenue fund. All right, so
That's a chunk.
that's a chunk. That's going to leave about 156 million. And those dollars, unless, I mean, as far as we know, the House could spend that on transportation or whatever they want to. I mean,
But
that's
that
just
300
money.
million, when that happens, would then lose the match, the federal government
Yeah,
match?
unless they were to happen to take those dollars and put them in a Medicaid program, which
Hmm.
you usually don't do that with non-recurring dollars, and by
Right.
definition, those are non-recurring dollars. Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say you lose the potential match there, which just off the top of my head is probably about $350 million. So there's about 650 million of potential uh, spending in APD's budget that disappears with that particular policy. So, but that will be negotiated. These are, as you can see, these are pretty big differences between the two. Now, the next one may not be of too much interest to you guys, but it is to a lot of people that I talk to, and that's the APD computer, the iConnect. Looks like both chambers want to replace the iConnect system. So if there are any providers,
Woohoo!
yeah, any providers or support coordinators, that comes as good news. They both chambers though have put in a little bit of red tape for APD, so I'll just do a real quick overview. The House provides 33.5 million. That's half state, half federal. They have pretty detailed proviso language. They want APD to procure a third party entity to assist with developing system specs and developing a procurement or providing procurement support, which I assume would also mean probably helping in drafting the procurement document. And then they mandate that the project be monitored by a person over in the what is now called the Florida Digital Service, which is a unit in the Department of Management Services that oversees big ticket information technology projects. So they would, so they're asking for, some outside help for APD for this implementation. The Senate also uh, anticipates a replacement, but they're only they're only providing 2.4 million for the procurement piece. And they would direct iLab, who has done the two previous iConnect studies, to develop, uh, to provide the procurement support and, develop the business requirements and so forth that would be used in the procurement. But they actually tell the agency to hold off and wait for further direction in the next General Appropriations Act before they actually issue that procurement. So both chambers appear to want to slow down the momentum in that, and I know that is an issue that APD is finally on board with the system replacement. Um, and I think APD, I believe correctly, would like to move a little more aggressively, given that this existing system has been there for 10 years now, and the agency still needs a good client data management system because
Jim, it's crippled the agency. It's diminished and discouraged a lot of the support coordinators and providers, and it's damaged a lot of goodwill across the systems just by making ease of use kind of an oxymoron.
yeah, yeah, it's and the support coordinators really have it are probably the ones they can't get out of using it.
Right.
I will say, and that's a nice segue. Both chambers in their implementing bill, they repeat language from the last implementing bill that allows providers to maintain data in their own system, and they can electronically transfer it to iConnect. But what APD in implementing that language, they basically told providers you can maintain your the documentation either in an electronic system, um, or you can maintain it in a non-electronic system, and we uh, will accept that as documentation. Both the House and Senate also repeat proviso language in the budget itself that prohibits the agency from engaging in compliance, monitoring, or initiating recoupments that are tied to iConnect. So the providers get a pass. And again, hopefully, we are at least taking baby steps towards a long-term alleviation of the issues that we've seen, and the agency needs and honestly, all of the stakeholders deserve a solid, functional data management system because that's just become almost prerequisite to running a system of care. So it's
Well, when you got billions of dollars involved and hundreds of, you got thousands of people and providers and everybody, it's a complicated system. But one of the things I really appreciate about this with you, Jim, is that you've got such a vast experience both on the legislative side, but also on the administrative side as a past director, and that the balance between the two. And so for families, specifically around iConnect, we still want to figure out a way we can have a dashboard so we can see what's going on, because too often we're heard that they never got the paperwork, it's this or that, or there's been a
yeah,
problem. We want to figure out a way and, bring our voice to the table that, we have a great vested interest in the success of these programs and are eager to be part of the checks and balances, but you have to have access even if it's view only, just to be able to see what's going on, at least on, like an updated dashboard of status.
right. And Tom, that was actually one of the original
Hmm.
deliverables of the
Right.
iConnect system, and it was one of my priorities when I was the director and we had started to implement iBudget. Was I wanted a system that everybody, that all the people who had a legitimate need to access information, most notably family members, because I wanted iBudget in some ways was intended to challenge uh, either the self-advocates or the family members to become more involved.
Right.
And in order to facilitate that, you needed to have a good handle on what was going on. So,
Of
point,
access.
yeah, access just to see what was, and yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be, I mean, at least for the family members that care enough to go in and look, yeah, they would know if the support coordinator dropped the ball, or you'd know if somebody else dropped the ball. I mean, it's a good point.
So we're
So
going to try to continue to bring that voice to the table, and I think that we've been working pretty hard bringing the faces of families, of individuals, trying to humanize what, when you listen to the budget discussion, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of process, there's a lot of differences of process between the House and Senate. It can be a little bit overwhelming and just kind of tracking all the different buckets and processes and things like that. But what I can say from a family perspective is the programs exist because we fought, because we spoke up, because we challenged in the courts, because of the challenges with developmental services and making them be able to do more and being able to settle with the waiver. So, Jim, again, is the doors open, or even if the doors are closed, tell us which doors we need to be knocking on, banging on, and educating, because the more engaged the families are, the individuals are, I think the better the quality can be and the more responsive the programs can be.
yeah, well, I appreciate that, Tom, and y'all are doing a pretty good job. I think Nicole is, I've seen you guys, and you're visiting the right people, and I mean, the focus will shift to the two subcommittee chairs uh, as the first budget officers. This kind of what'll happen
Who
is the
are
sub.
those? Who do you know who those are? The subcommittee chairs?
All right, Senator Jay Trumbull from Panama City is the
Okay.
Senate HHS chair, and then so you actually have
It's
two
Andrade, right?
Northwest Florida, and then Andrade in the House, and he's from over in Pensacola.
Hmm.
So if there's
Northern folks,
yeah,
interesting.
northern folks now
The
for
old
those.
power center of Florida was the Panhandle, long before
Oh
all
yeah.
the, yeah, that's where the real legislative power historically has lied. And
Yeah.
so, Jim, can you kind of explain when you've taken those differences between the House and the Senate and these different processes, can you kind of wrap it into how does that kind of come out? How does the sausage come out as one sausage?
Well, like any good sausage plant, you're not going to see everything,
Right,
and you may not even want to.
right.
This
But
conversation took another turn.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
yeah,
that's what it's
Okay.
called, making the sausage. It's just an
Oh,
old
okay.
political term.
yeah, it's uh, I mean, what you're going to see is a series of offers between the House and Senate. So first thing that's going to happen is the
But like
leadership.
behind closed doors, right? Like we don't see an exchange of offers. Do we have
No, no,
privy to
no,
that?
no, no. You will see.
Okay.
They're actually better at that than they were when I was there.
Okay.
I'm going to give them credit. They're more transparent. Everything about the process,
There's more
believe it or
social
not.
media too.
Well, that's it because everything's available online. It used to be if you wanted to track amendments on bills, you couldn't sit at a computer and do it. You had to be at the Capitol, and you literally had to go to the House or Senate document office and get
Yeah.
pieces of paper. And then because of both House and Senate rules, and I had to try to keep up with this stuff as staff, you would see amendments for the first time, like 2 minutes before it was going to come up for debate. And you're trying to
Oh.
tell a chairman what it does. It was real tough, but now they actually have filing deadlines so that in advance of a meeting
Hmm.
what's been filed, what's going to be discussed. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more transparent than it's ever been.
Hmm.
But I can tell you that particularly once you get to those last few offers, there's an awful lot of just
Horse trading.
there. Yeah, and it's going on. This used to happen every session with me during conferences. If we were hosting, the Senate chair would come over to my office with his staff director, and then my chair would be there, and we'd just talk this stuff through and try to put together offers that would get us as close to closed out. There are things, that your leadership are going to tell you not to close out because because the leadership wants to handle its leadership initiatives and priorities. But there are a lot of conversations that you don't see that are taking place in offices that you can't get to. But the offers themselves, the formal offers, uh, you will see every one of those will be posted. And if you need help accessing that or figuring out how to follow it, I'm happy to help y'all offline uh, with doing that. But
And is
that
the influence on those processes long gone? And now that's really kind of a leadership. It's between them now and the constituent influences and all that. That stuff is kind of left behind.
um, I wouldn't say it's been totally left behind. The you're gonna have a harder time getting to people
Right.
at this part of the process because they're either going to be in these public meetings, and if you look at a conference meeting, what you're going to see is they come together, they say, Madam Chair, here's the offer. And a lot of times the public part of these meetings lasts 5 minutes.
Hmm.
Then the other chamber says, well, we really appreciate this. Let us take it back and we're going to look at it and
We'll come
we'll
back.
come back with a counter. And so they counter and there'll be a few passes and then they'll once the subcommittee chairs reach an impasse, which in an ideal world, they don't leave many issues hanging out at that point, but that may not happen this time. Then they do what they call it a bump. They bump to the two full appropriations chairs, and that's Ed Hooper from
Clearwater.
Pinellas County, Clearwater, and oh God, what's that
Pick
guy's name?
Tomco,
No, it's not Tomco. It's McClure.
McClure.
Uh,
And so they're giving
Um,
the
he's from
House and
Tampa.
Senate blessings to the negotiated agreement that from a appropriations perspective, both of those leaderships can live with it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, by the time it gets to the to those to the two full chairs, you've got involvement by the Senate president and
Yeah.
the and the uh, and the House. I'm trying to figure out where McClure is from. Let's see.
So while you're looking at that, so then there is a period of time that once everything's agreed to, it has to have uh, like a resting period. Is it 72
Oh yeah,
hours
yeah, yeah.
or
All right, so the and this only applies to the budget. So mind you, there's an implementing bill and a series of conforming bills. They're not subject to that 72 hour cooling off period. Representative McClure, by the way, is from Plant City, so I guess southeast Hillsborough.
so
Um,
Tampa Bay's got the money this time, House and Senate.
Strawberry festival there.
Yeah, the Tampa Bay area is
The purse strings.
yeah, they're in the catbird seat, and then for our area, it's Northwest Florida. But
So I know you have to jump off at 3:45, and I
mhm.
really want to get this question. Could you back up to that surplus piece again? Because that's the part where there was big news. APD reverted all of this money, and is this a new reversion? Or, like, I don't understand how this
Now,
happened.
these are dollars that have already reverted
Okay.
from previous years. There's language that the same language that's been in for several years now that says APD can keep any surplus and it adds to that lump sum.
So
So
there's
it
basically a bucket of money that over the years has kept filling up with the unused portion,
yeah,
and it's that's where that 456 million is, that state bucket of dollars that could
yeah,
also be pulling down those federal dollars. Is
yeah,
that a simple way to look at it?
Why
yeah,
wouldn't they use
yeah.
it? I don't understand that.
Well, it's a complicated explanation, but I'm going to try to
Thanks.
make it not complicated. First off, it's a byproduct of really not being in the estimating conference and how the legislature actually funds iBudget.
Mm,
Let's just say we have 100. Let's say the legislature wants to fund 100 people out of the on the waiting list, and those 100 people, we'll say they cost $1 million. I want to keep this round
Hmm.
numbers.
mhm,
Now, in the real world, in year one, by the time we get people an offer, find them a support coordinator, do all the stuff you have to do, you're probably going to be lucky if those people are actually receiving their full complement of services for 6 months.
mhm,
Right. So half
So
of
let's
it.
just say that to serve those 100 people, you're only going to use $500,000. Now, next year, those
yeah,
same people are going to cost you $1 million.
mhm,
So you don't have a recurring surplus, but you have a one-time surplus.
mhm,
All right. That's part of why that surplus developed. It's just in other Medicaid programs, they would only fund what the estimating conference estimated you needed for the program. And then the next year, when the funding requirement increases, the estimating conference picks that up.
So Jim,
And
to
so
kind
the
of give
budget,
a little
it's a
historical
technical thing.
a little historical perspective on that, then when APD overspent, then they got slapped hard to the point of being so afraid to overspend they couldn't spend it, and it created a reoccurring overly cautious management based upon the historical hand slap. Is that a fair way to
Yeah.
kind of summarize it?
I think that is a very fair way to characterize that. And again, I live the pressure
Right.
that every APD director that followed me lived with. And APD probably, again, factor number one is just there's going to be a surplus if when the legislature, to its credit, has given APD waitlist money, but the way they gave it, it was going to create at least a one-time surplus. The second part of this, I believe, is APD perhaps being more cautious than they had to. And I think that might be, again, I want to be careful not to speak for him, but I think that's what Bob suspects and why he felt comfortable sending out all those offer letters. So
That
it's,
makes a lot of sense, Jim. When it really comes down to operationally, what we see in the field is, again, it takes a long time to ramp up to full utilization. You know,
yeah,
you've got gaps, you've got months where you may not have a provider, and part of that budget just disappears and it ends up in that bucket. So, um, does that one-time thing, can that be more likely to be used for projects like the replacing the iConnect and those? Is that why they kind of go to that bucket?
well, I think they could go. I mean, certainly some of the initial development costs associated with iConnect replacement are going to be non-recurring in nature, and that's a very legitimate that would be a way to keep the dollars in the program. And I mean, the House could argue, hey, we use a fair amount of that 300 million right back in APD, or they at least use some of it back in APD.
So bottom line, Jim, is that you can tell by a budget implementation if the intent is for the agency to be successful or if it's to diminish the likelihood of success. And that brings us to kind of the revenue estimating conference opportunity that we're going to explore
Yeah. Now,
around the trying to operate with one hand tied behind your back the whole time.
yeah. Well, let me tell you, again, to talk about that language, it's again, I would argue, and guys, just understand, I worked on the appropriations committee for 20 years, so I think like a budget person. Um, in my opinion, both programs should be in the estimating conference because they're both Medicaid programs. And while neither one of them is a mandatory program, once you offer those to people, there are certain mandatory minimum requirements. And while it was initially thought when the state of Florida bought into the waiver, and I was there,
Me too.
this was over 30 years ago when we implemented what is essentially the modern waiver.
Right.
Um, the state, while we can have waiting lists, so in that respect, it's not an entitlement. However, once a person gets enrolled, there has been a series of case law, there's been bills, there's been things that it's you have to provide the medically necessary services once the person's. So even though the waiver and this managed care pilot, neither one of them are strict entitlements, but once people get enrolled, you have to serve their needs. Reasonable. Now, people can argue that APD is not doing that, and or that you may one day argue the same about the managed care pilot, but at least on a legal standard, there are certain costs that the agency nor the legislature can precisely control like they could if this were state grant and aid. And we were just issuing a series of grants or entering into a series of contracts. Well, then you just make sure that the sum total of your contracts don't exceed the appropriation. That's how you handle that. But you can't do that. It's a lot more difficult with Medicaid, and that would get into a really. I can talk to you guys separately or offline about that, but it just becomes very difficult. I will
So what
say
we're
this.
saying, Jim, in the simplest of forms is trying to keep it equal, recognizing it like the rest of Medicaid, the estimating conference is a vital tool in the management administration. If you're thinking about doing it for managed care, you certainly ought to do it for the
Right.
iBudget as well.
Now, I will tell you this. This particular language is not going to be a benefit. If this language were in place right now, I'm pretty sure that the amount budgeted for the managed care pilot would go down pretty significantly because it was funded for over 2,000 people. They've got just under 1,000 is the last number I saw. And I don't believe they're utilizing the entire per member per month.
And that's
So
what the
this is,
estimating conference is really looking at is
yeah, they would look at caseload, utilization, and expenditures, and they would come up with a much different number than what is in the budget right now. That's what I would predict, and I'm about 99% sure my prediction is correct on that.
currently in managed care, there is no quote wait list. But there certainly is still a significant one. So, Jim, you are an absolute jewel of knowledge, and I appreciate when you let us kind of carve back some of the bureaucracy talk and get down to kind of that Southern Alabama common sense communication. We appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, and guys, I'm going to make a shameless plug. I have a website that this is all written up. It's obviously I don't go into the level of verbiage that I just did trying to explain it, but if you want to check this out for yourself, my website is rfjgov.com and go to Jim's blog. And then I did a midweek kind of summary of what's happening. I've got some tidbits on some other bills that look like they're moving in the process. So if you want a reference document, so to speak, you could go there. And then once the conference gets underway, they're going to be side by side spreadsheets that uh, Tom, I'm sure you know how, if you don't know how to access those, contact me and I'll send you the link and then you can follow that stuff on
My
your own.
dog, this is an amazing website. I didn't know that you had this. It's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, knowledge
Yeah.
is power, and we you can't be participatory if you're so intimidated by everything. So we do really appreciate kind of getting a little bit of the inside view of the sausage factory and what it takes, and it is complicated, but I will brag about us and say I think that our efforts are continuing to bring some humanism to policy, and
Yeah.
we
No, and
need to continue.
yeah, keep it up. And guys, I do have to go. I've got uh some of you may be joining us for the Let's Talk series. So
Yep.
if you are, you're going to get a double dose of what I've just talked about. But I need to be there about 10 minutes early for that. So I'm
Appreciate
going to
you
sign
coming.
off, but thank you
Thank you,
so
Jim.
much for having
Oh,
me. I always
thank
enjoy
you,
talking to
Jim.
you guys.
Thank
All
Thank
right.
you
Bye-bye.
very
All
Take
much.
care
right.
now. Bye bye.
Bye.
So there you have it. There's, it's like the OG convention today, kind of talking about kind of how we got from here to there. And when we're talking about the revenue estimating conference, we were talking about deficits. We were talking about why is money getting reverted back and why aren't we using all the dollars and all those types of things. As you can tell in listening to Jim, it's not simple. It's a complicated process. There's a lot of different moving parts to it. But what is important is that if they're talking about the managed care pilot being an alternative to iBudget, while simultaneously recognize in order for that to be successful, probably needs to be part of the estimating conference. Well, that would suggest one or two things. If they're not also including iBudget, they may not want it to be successful.
Tom, you know
And
how you say all the time you're either at the table or you're on the menu?
right.
Feel like we have been sitting at this table and I'm hearing Jim say 10 million plus a federal match, 20 million on one side, 20 million on the other. The Senate wants to help providers. The House is saying, yeah, we'll take a few people off the wait list. We've got 16,000, if that's accurate, people on a waiting list. I'm feeling like caviar. Like I don't feel as though I'm at the table right now. Pretty discouraged by this session, and I've gotten a lot of calls from families with similar feelings.
I
Um,
feel like that's the overall tone.
yeah,
I,
like
I feel
we're
so
gonna like
strongly with
it
them.
feels like a big slap in the face. We're gonna do an estimating conference for the managed care program, but we're not gonna do an estimating conference for iBudget. We're going to give $22 million, nothing specific in that. And we're not even in agreement on that on both sides. Like it feels
And we also
I
have
need a
that.
little Tom Hope
Yeah.
Well,
or
let's look at
Dot
some couple of
or
things
something.
that are valuable to appreciate. Yesterday, we had a new director,
Yep.
and one that we've so far said we like the direction, we like the attitude, we like the engagement. Let's see how it turns into action. But just yesterday, he officially became the director.
Mm-hmm.
I got my daughter got a letter the other day and it still has the acting director on the letterhead, Lorena. So that will change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were at the Didi Day and um, we all got together for what attempted to be a dinner and turned kind of into a cocktail hour slash late dinner.
What are you
Uh,
talking about?
but but it was really quite clear that the engagement of people, of families, of consumers, of providers was not just an afterthought, but seemed to be genuinely desired. Then the next day, a group of us went over and Bob hosted us at the state headquarters, kind of did a bit of a dog and pony show with a bunch of the key staff folks, introduced us. And, because of confidentiality and who wants to go look at a bunch of cubicles, we went back to Bob's office and kind of hung out there for about 30 minutes. And it turned into kind of like just a hangout. We were having
Mm-hmm.
conversations about his military history, and he was showing us different pictures and different
Yeah,
things.
Dr. Wee Wee went right up to him and looked at his family pictures. We got to learn about his grandkid moving to Florida. I thought that was personal.
Yeah, his daughter, he's excited his daughter's moving. But that's how we build the relationships that give us the clout that we need to
Right.
make sure people care. So I think that's really substantial forward motion, at least in the fact that we've built a relationship with the director where he sees us as people, not as numbers. And that's important. I will
And
say,
not only people are numbers, Anna, but also we're not just parents. We're not just consumers. We may be very analytical people, business managers, educated people, folks
we're
that
advisors.
have
Yeah.
common damn sense and can see how to make something work. And so my hopes is that we look at it just a little historically.
Okay.
Bob comes from Jeb Bush era.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Jeb Bush era was, we're going to make this thing work. We're going to care about families and we're going to make it work. So if we can bring that vibe back by supporting fair treatment in things like revenue estimating conferences, we can give this thing a shot. And I'm not ready to give up. It's too important. We've gone too far. I think we have an opportunity. Honestly, it's a shockingly good appointment.
Yeah, and when this is a long game too, and we don't know what comes next in a lot of these things. We don't have control. We're never going to have control. And when it comes to the political realm, there's a whole nother story happening behind the scenes that we're never going to be at the table for. That's just the reality of it.
And the other
And
reality is
yeah,
that
I
we
know.
have a freedom of speech
Yes.
that nobody else has. I mean, I know that many
Yep.
people,
Hmm.
if you build trust, they will provide you the insight and knowledge so you're not just complaining, but you're providing intelligent insight with a level of freedom of speech that those within government cannot exercise.
Yeah.
So that hanging out, that relationship, learning about his family, talking about different things, making it human, making it real. The other thing that we need to be able to do is be smart enough to look for the solution,
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
just to find the problem. That's easy to find. We don't want to be deficit based. We can do this, we can improve this, we can expedite that. But let's face it, legislative session is sometimes referred to the 60 most dangerous days of Florida, in some circles. But
That
we
feels
have an
accurate.
opportunity here. Some of this is getting into the legislative negotiated budgetary stuff that, it's kind of behind our hands, but we've got to be supportive, be engaged. My last thought is put your ear to the ground about your local family care councils.
Mm,
Yes.
We
Thank
need
you.
to
We
activate
need
those care councils, fill up those slots, turn them into engagement vehicles. It's a structure that is there for that to happen. We just need people that are engaged, that are vocal, that are informed, that participate, and that expect and demand quality. And
yeah.
that's what the Family Care Council, the rejuvenation of that effort really is about by the people only is that if the by the people are at the table and the Family Care Council is being set up to be again the table for us
Right.
to be there. And
And
with
that's a
All right,
that,
real,
we are
TikTok. I
completely
know
out of time.
yeah,
we
we
gotta
did
jump to
that
the other one.
quickly. Family Cafe is doing their Let's Talk series right now. So I want everybody to have the chance to log off. We'll be here next week and I will be coming in from Tallahassee. So I'm gonna go back at it next week, see what we got. It's great to see you all. We will see you next Friday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.